Welcome, this is Shawna Audet from the Flying Cat Academy. In today's session, we'll be learning about the open syllable and ways that we can teach the open syllable concepts to our students. How do we introduce the open syllable to our students? Well, as usual, we will begin by reviewing. So we'll start with the closed syllable rule. Start with something they know, scaffold it. We'll use multisensory tools, perhaps magnetic letter tiles or the paper letter tiles, and we will create a sequence. We could start with M-E-T, and the students will read this without any trouble because they've already learned so much about closed syllables by this point. And we'll tell the story where we have M-E-T, and the final consonant is a babysitter. And it is keeping that E nice and calm, so the E is going to say its calm sound, its short sound, as in Eddie. And then we'll just say, after we tell that babysitter story, we'll introduce the concept of the open syllable, because we'll add to our story. And we'll say, oh, but what would happen if the babysitter left? The vowel would get scared and it would start shouting its name so that its mom could find it. It would just be all on its own with the M and the E. And it might say, E is over here, Mom, come get me, help. And that's the story that we tell. We will always give the student a rule card when we introduce a new syllable type. And here's one that was created by the Dyslexia Training Institute to introduce the open syllable. We'll tell the students that in an open syllable, there is only one vowel. The vowel is not followed by any consonants. When we have a situation like that, the vowel sound is long. And we might reiterate the story of the fact that there's no babysitter, so the vowel gets very upset and it starts screaming its name so its mom can find it. I bet you can guess what's coming up by this point. You know that I'm a big fan of the word sorts. So we're going to have an open syllable. Is it an open syllable word sort? And we'll make index cards with different syllables on it, and the student will sort them into either a yes column or a no column, and they'll have the rule card right beside them, and they'll be applying the rules. And we'll be talking about the decisions that the student's making so that they can verbalize why they're putting each card in each different column. They might say, re has no babysitter at the end, it has no consonant, and it only has one vowel, so it would go in the yes pile. Z-A-I-L is not, because there's the two vowels that are a clue, or the student might say there's a babysitter at the end. D-E-A-L, not an open syllable. It has two vowels in the middle, which makes it impossible to be an open syllable, and it also has a consonant on the end. Can't be an open syllable. Now it's your turn. Make a drill that you can use at a later date. You'll use 8 to 10 syllable cards, and you'll have the two header cards that say yes, open syllable, and you probably want to put an example there of an open syllable, or no. You can do this now. Pause the video and then continue. When you're teaching the is it an open syllable drill using the yes or no card sort, we want to access the prior information that the student knows. I wrote a sample conversation that you might have with the student, and we'll go through it now. So the teacher might say, we are going to talk about open syllables. What do you remember about open syllables from our open syllable definition? The student might say, it will always have a vowel on the end. Then the teacher would say, what sound will the vowel make? And the student would tell you that it would make a long sound. The teacher would ask, can an open syllable have more than one vowel? And the student would say no. The teacher would say, can there be a consonant before the vowel? And the student would say yes. The teacher would say, an open syllable has one vowel. The vowel makes a long sound, says its name, and the vowel is never followed by a consonant. If all these conditions are present, we know that we have an open syllable. So just to reiterate how the sorting drill works, step 1 is that the teacher places a note card. One of the note cards says yes, and one of the note cards says no. Put them on the table, and then the teacher gives the students a stack of index cards that contain open syllables and other syllable types. The teacher asks the student to place the cards that are open syllables under the yes column, and the other syllable types will go under the no column. During this drill, I just want to point out that the student does not have to read the cards or read the words as they sort. Some kids like to attempt it, and I don't stop them if they want to, but this is simply to reinforce the rules of the open syllable, and the point is kind of cool that they don't have to read it to be able to know what it is. The next big concept in the open syllable progression is the different sounds of Y. In an open syllable, Y is acting as a vowel. So we will begin by reviewing the concept of Y as a consonant that the students learned during the closed syllable. And we'll start off by singing the song that we learned in the closed syllable progression. And then we'll do a sort. So in the closed syllable progression, the song that we sang was A-E-I-O-U are vowels that I know you've heard, but Y is only a vowel when it's not at the start of a word. So in the closed syllable, the students learned that when the Y is in the initial position at the start of a word, it will always be a consonant, and it will make the Y sound. But when Y is in different positions in the word, it makes different sounds. These are applicable in the open syllable. Y-I-D. The Y is at the beginning of the word, so it's acting as a consonant. In F-L-Y, Y is not at the beginning, so we know it's acting as a vowel. In S-K-Y, Y is not at the beginning, so it must be acting as a vowel. And once again, we don't even have to have the students read the words at this point. Now we'll give the student a rule card, and we're going to figure out the sounds that the Y makes when it's in different positions in a word. The rule card will say that Y is a vowel when it is in any position other than at the start of a word. The second part of this rule is that Y at the end of a one-syllable base makes the long I sound, as in dry, try, fly. And the third part of the rule is that Y at the end of a 2 or more syllable base makes the long E sound, as in lady. So let's prove this rule. We're going to do a sort. In dry, it's a one-syllable word and the Y is at the end, and so the Y is going to make a long I sound. In yug, Y is at the start of the word, and we know that's a closed syllable, so it will always make the Y sound. The 4 sounds that a Y can make are Y, E, I, and I. In baby, we have an open syllable, B-A, and so that's forcing the A to say its name, bay. And then we have B-Y, a second open syllable. So in a multi-syllable word that's an open syllable, the long E will be made by the Y, baby. Lady is the same situation, tiny. And then rye, which is not a word on its own, but could be part of a bigger word, such as rhinestone. Now it's your turn to make the drill. So use 3 header cards, and we can use index cards to create this. And on the headers, you'll put Y as a consonant, Y as the long I sound, and Y as long E sound. Then use 10 to 12 word cards. You can use real words. We always want to include some nonsense words, and the nonsense words, it's best if there would be, syllables that could actually be part of bigger words. Here's an explanation of how you would teach this drill. Just like before, we'll begin by accessing prior information. The teacher might say, we're going to talk about the sounds that Y can make. What do you remember about the sounds of Y? The student might remember that Y is a consonant when it's at the start of a word. And the teacher would say, what sound does Y make when it's at the end of a one-syllable word like dry? And now the student would have to hear that sound that's being made at the end of the word. They would say, I hear a long I sound. The teacher would say, what sound does Y make when it is at the end of a 2 or more syllable word, such as baby? And the student would hear that there's a long E sound there. So when Y is acting as the vowel in an open syllable, in 1 syllable words, it makes the long I sound. When it is at the end of a 2 or more syllable word, it makes the long E sound. Let's look at the instructions for how you'll do this sorting drill. I think you're probably getting to be experts at sorting drills by now, so I hope this isn't redundant. The teacher will place those 3 header cards on the table and then give the student a stack of cards that contain syllables showing the different sounds of Y. The teacher will ask the student to place the cards under the correct headings to show the sounds of Y. If you have a student that's struggling, then the teacher will model the activity with the first card. And remember that the student does not have to read the words as they sort. The next thing that we'll make sure to do is include the letter card blending drill in our teaching. Using letter cards with only closed and open syllables, you're going to have the student read the words which change by 1 letter as different cards are added. Let's look at how that might look. So I'll start with something that's known to the students, very easy for them, not. We'll change it into got. And just pointing out, this font that I chose for this PowerPoint is not a good one because that G would cause confusion, so you want to be really careful with the fonts you choose. Now I take the babysitter away. Turns into go. Row. Re. Rye. Rid. And here you'll discuss how when the consonant babysitter comes back, the I is calm, he's happy again, so he can say his short sound. Rad. Lad. Now it's your turn. Write out a sequence for a blending drill that you can use to teach open syllables. When you're doing this, you're going to use a combination of closed and open syllables. You're also going to use a combination of real and nonsense words. Organize your letter cards, and if you're in a group situation right now, and you have time, then teach the drill to a partner. Pause the video right now so you can complete that. After the student has had some practice with blending drills, we'll move on to the syllable card drills, where we're making 2 syllable words using open syllables. So we'll put 8 to 12 syllable cards in 2 columns and lay them out in front of the student. Put the first syllables in the first column, and then have the student read through the cards. Ask the student to join the cards to make different rows together to make the real and nonsense words. When the student needs more support, the teacher can choose the cards and have the student read them to make some real words. When the student makes a real word, ask him or her to put it in a sentence. So if we were going to unscramble these ones, so would go with low and it would make solo. V would go with toe and it'd be veto. A student might not know what veto means, so you can share the meaning with them and then put it in a sentence for them. Wi-Fi and pogo. There are very few real 2-syllable words that contain 2 syllables that are both open syllables. So these are the 4 that the Dyslexia Training Institute used, and that's what I use in my lessons too. After we do this drill, then we'll start doing drills where we have a closed syllable and an open syllable, and we'll talk about that later. By this point, the student will be very familiar with the steps that are used in dividing a word into syllables. Now, the key is to draw their attention to the sounds that the vowels are making so that they can determine if the syllables are closed or open. This is one of those key moments where the students are gaining the information that they need so they can break apart unknown words. So in this word, I wouldn't read it to them. I would practice dividing it different ways with the student to see the different sounds the word can make. So the student might tell me that the logical thing to do is divide it between the 2 consonants because that's what we've learned when we were doing the closed syllable. So I would say, well, let's give that a try. and they would divide S-E-C as the first syllable and R-E-T, and they would read it as secret. And I'd say, have you ever heard of secret? And they would tell me no. And I'd say, let's try and divide it a different way. Let's try to make an open syllable and then a closed syllable. And then they would divide it in this way. They'd identify their vowels, and they would scoop it so that S-E was the first syllable. C-R-E-T would be the second syllable. And they would mark this one as open, this one as closed, and then they would try and read it that way. And they would get secret, and they would realize, ding, 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 that is a winner because that is a true word. And they would blend them together and realize, secret, I did it. And mark with the long sign, the long straight line for a long syllable or long vowel, E-C, and the short sign for Eddie. Now it's your turn. Let's practice syllabication rules using open and closed syllables. Remember the rule that when you want to find a syllable, you're really listening for the different vowels that are in that syllable. And one way to feel those is you can put your hand under your chin, and every time your jaw hits your hand, you're feeling a syllable, as in unopen. And you can really feel the syllables when you have your hand hitting the jaw, hitting the hand. So you can pause the video here, and when you're finished, you can continue by checking the answers. The next thing we'll look at is how the schwa works in open syllables. And as usual, we'll scaffold, so we'll begin by reminding the student how the schwa works in closed syllables before we move on to how it works in open syllables. We'll remind them that the schwa makes a short vowel sound, but it's not the short vowel sound of the letter that appears in the word. In most words, the schwa will sound like it can make a long I turn into a I sound though. And the symbol for schwa is an upside down E. We're going to use syllable cards to teach this concept, just like we did when we were in the closed syllable. And we'll actually use the same syllable cards that we created when we were doing the schwa in closed syllables. So you'll remember that this was one of the cards that we made during the closed syllable when we taught the schwa. And there was one index card that had A on it, and one index card that had mid on it, and then we had a little card that had the upside down E, and we had the student put the upside down E above the A to read it as a mid. And remember this one, go, zebra, so, fa. When we teach the schwa in open syllables, we are going to remind the student that the schwa is a way to speed up the way we say words. It appears in multisyllabic words, and it makes a short vowel sound, but the vowel sound is not the sound that we expect. Most of the time it will turn into this sound because it's very simple to make, but sometimes it will make this short I sound. We can always expect where the schwa is going to appear in the word is going to appear in the unstressed syllable. So in multisyllable words, because English is a stressed language, there's going to be one part of the word that we say louder than the other. We can, if the student has a hard time understanding this, you can show them how this works in a sentence. You could say, listen for the words that really pop out in the sentence. I'm gonna go to the store. I'm gonna go to the store. When you say it that way, you can hear go and store really pop out. Those are the stressed words in that sentence. And the other words, well, we do all kinds of craziness to the other words to try and speed them up. I am going to turned into I'm gonna. To turned into t. So we really focus on the stress when we're speaking in English. And this works at a word level as well. And that's what we're hearing in the schwa. We'll remind them that the symbol for the schwa is an upside down E. And in the first lesson, we'll focus on words in which the schwa makes a short sound, specifically in the A. Amid, go. Amaze. You made this drill already when they were learning about the closed syllables, so it's nice that you can reuse the drill and you don't have to make a new one. You're going to tell the student that all the words in the first drill will be schwa words that make the short sound for the letter U. And while the student does the drill, you keep asking the student to identify the type of syllable in each word. So, is it closed? Is it open? Is it a vowel, consonant, silent D? There's a list of the words that you can use in this drill, and I think you already have it, but if you didn't make the drill in the closed syllable, then you should make the drill now. After you go through the drills on concerning the times where the schwa is making the sound, we'll move on to times where they make the schwa, where the schwa is making the I sound, as in the word celebrate. While the student does the drill, you're going to keep asking the student to identify the different types of syllables in each word. Is it a closed syllable? Is it an open syllable? Is it a vowel, consonant, silent D syllable? You'll use 2 and 3 syllable words in the syllable card drill, and I've listed some possible words on this slide. So, for example, compliment, implicate, problem, celebrate, carpet, item, event, and profit. You should have this one already made from when you did the closed syllables, but if you don't, you should make one. So you'll make the cards for the multi-syllable words if you haven't done it already, and you'll use them in the syllable card drill. And if you're in a group situation right now, it would be great to practice teaching the drill. You'll begin by telling the student that all of the words today will be schwa words that make the short is sound. You'll ask the student what sound the schwa, if you schwa'd an I, what sound would it make? And the student will say I. And you put down all the syllable cards for a word, and put down the schwa card. And you'll show the student how to do the drill if they need that, by putting the cards together and placing a schwa over the letter, and then reading the word. While the student does the drill, you will keep asking the student to identify the syllable types in each word, and they will always be either closed, open, or vowel, consonant, silent D. Another concept that we will teach after we teach the schwa is what happens when we add suffixes to open syllables. And as always, we'll begin by scaffolding. So we'll start off by reviewing, start off where the student already knows. So we'll look at how the doubling rule worked in closed syllable words. We will remind the student that there's this rule called the 1-1-1 rule. They'll probably remember it quite well. And what that means is that in a one syllable base, where the base ends in one consonant, and there is one vowel before that final consonant, making it a closed syllable, if you add a suffix that begins with a vowel, then you must double the final consonant in the base. So then we take some cards out and we practice proving that rule. We'll let the student experience hop, and they'll do a word sum. And they'll say, do I have to double it? Is that a doubler if I want to add ing to hop? And they will tell you that yes, it is a doubler because there's a final consonant preceded by a short vowel, and you're ending a suffix that starts with a vowel, ing. So hopping would have to be spelled H-O-P-P-I-N-G. Camp, on the other hand, has 2 consonants at the end, so it does not follow the 1-1-1 rule. For that reason, when we spell camping, it would just be C-A-M-P-I-N-G. And then we'll use a nonsense word so they can really practice applying the rule. And when they apply the rule, they'll see that BAP is a doubler. So this is a review drill for the doubling rule, and you can see that we're going to use a lot of different closed syllables as we do this, and the student's going to have to apply quite a few different rules that they learned about closed syllables as they're completing the drill. We'll put the bases on the far left, and then we'll have little plus signs, so it actually looks like a mathematical problem, and we use a little sign that says equals at the end there, and they can make the whole word. So here's what it'll look like. You'll ask some guiding questions. You'll say, how many syllables does each word have? What's at the end of each word? What's before the final consonant? Does a suffix start with a vowel? And as the student is completing the word sums, they will be explaining the rules because you'll be asking the guiding questions. And you can see that there's multiple suffixes there, so I let the students choose what suffix they want to practice adding. And the middle cards, the CH, the K, the M, and the T, are options, but they will, obviously, they don't always fit with the word. Okay, so part 2 of the review drill for the doubling 1-1-1 rule for adding suffixes. Now we'll have the student explore new territory. We're going to expand to include open syllables. For example, the word go. What would that look like as a word sum? Go plus S. Okay, well, if this was a closed syllable, we would just slap those two together. What happens when we do that? We would get goss. We just created a closed syllable. That can't happen because we know that we're trying to say goes. So what we have to do here is add an ES to stop it from being a closed syllable. And that's why go is spelled with an ES. It's not, an exception to the rule or an irregular word. What we're doing is uncovering the rules that govern open syllables. So we'll say, when we're looking at future open syllables, let's see if that ES is a rule. Go plus ing is going. Okay, well, I wonder if it's a rule that ing just gets slapped onto the end of an open syllable. Let's look out for that in the next drill. Go plus ed. What happens if we do that? What would that word be? Goed. Oh, well, what is go in the past tense? Gone. So if we slapped OE, ED onto go, we'd be creating a confusion situation because people might read that as a vowel team or a diphthong. So we need to avoid confusion, and for that reason, in open syllables, often in the past tense, they are spelled in a completely different way. It's said in a completely different way, so go becomes gone. Let's see if that works in a different closed syllable. Are we uncovering rules that govern the open syllable? Do plus an S equals DOS. Uh-oh, we just made a closed syllable. We have to keep it as an open syllable. What we would do is add ES. And it becomes does. And the E will be just silently there, just doing its silent job so that we don't have a closed syllable. Do plus ing. In an open syllable, when you add ing, you just slap it on the end, and that seems to hold true. And what happens when we want to put it in the past? To avoid confusion, which would be created if we just slap the ending on, we make a whole different word. Let's try it with B. B plus an S. What would happen if we just added it together? Uh-oh, Bess, we created a closed syllable. So we're going to use our good friend E, our hard-working E, and he's just going to sit there silently saying this is not a closed syllable. Uh-oh, if we did that, look what would happen. We would make a brand new word. So in this case, because that would happen if we followed the original rule, we have to make a brand new word. And usually the rules of spelling are to avoid confusion. So to avoid the confusion there, we will make a different word to represent B in the present tense. B plus ing. Yep, we'll just let it happen. And then B plus ed. Once again, we don't want to confuse things. Did you know that in Old English, bead was actually a word for bed. So to avoid the confusion, they created a different word, was, to represent the past tense of be. And in old time English, bead meant bed and also meant to ask. There's a couple great websites that I use to look up word origins to find out little things like that fact about bead. Adding suffixes to open syllables. The last concept that we're going to teach in the open syllable progression is about the doubling rule for 2 or more syllables. We call this the 2-1-1 rule. So in a base that is 2 or more syllables, when the base ends in one consonant and the base has one vowel before the consonant, so what we've just described as a closed syllable, and the last syllable of the base is accented. That's the big point here. If the suffix begins with a vowel, we're going to double it. So let's look at what that means. O plus mit. So here's a 2-syllable word. It ends in one consonant, which is a T. There has one vowel before it, and the vowel is short, which is I, the I. And now we have to see which of these 2 syllables is accented when we say it, which is said louder. So do we say, I'm going to omit it? Or do we say, I'm going to omit it? One thing that we can do, if it's not clear, is we can call the word to dinner and we can see which sound is louder. So I would pretend I'm calling this word to dinner and I would say, omit, come to dinner. Which of the 2 sounds, which of the 2 syllables was stretched out? Omit. It was mit. So because omit is the part that is the accented part, we're going to double the T. How about this one? Pi plus lot. Do we say pilot and stress the lot, or do we say pilot and stress the pi? You can have the student call this word to dinner. Pilot. And you can hear that the pi is the stressed part. For this case, we don't have to double the T, and we would spell it P-I-L-O-T, and then we add the suffix ed. Now we'll do a syllable card drill to reinforce the concept. We'll put 8 to 16 syllable cards in rows and lay them out in front of the student. We'll put the first syllables in the first column and the second syllables in the second column. We'll have the student read through the cards. We'll ask the student to make 2-syllable words from the cards in the different columns. In the example that I'm showing you here, all the words are correct. For some kids, I would just have the words correctly sorted and they can just read begin, happen, open, admit. For other kids, it would be appropriate to scramble them all up and let the kids unscramble them. Because the point of this card drill today is to add the endings, I would just think about how much the student could handle. And if the sorting was going to make it just that much harder, I might not scramble the words. So then we will have, after the student reads the word begin, we'll have the student call this word to dinner. And they'll have to say, is it begin? Does that sound right? Or begin? And then they'll add the ending, and they can try to add the ing, they'll try to add the s, and they'll try to add the ed. And we've got 2 cards, one has an N on it and one has a T on it. And if it's a doubler, then they will use one of those cards to double it and they'll make the word sum. Congratulations! You now understand how open syllables